It may look like a harmless bagel toaster, but inside is a deadly donut. How do you know PlayStation is not a normal game system?
Hey everybody, welcome back to Game Esoterica and a continuing series, the PlayStation 1 Palace, where I take a look at some of my favorite PlayStation 1 games of all time. And if you can't tell already, we're playing Crash Team Racing today, because when I think about the PlayStation 1, I think about Crash Bandicoot, but I wanted to go a little bit offbeat, not just talk about one of the platformers. I wanted to talk about the racing game, because back in the 90s, if you were a successful mascot game, you were definitely getting a racing crossover, no questions asked. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, down below hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well where you can give me some Wumpa Fruit. All those jokes aside about Wumpa Fruit, it is a thing. It looks like an apple and a mango put together. I always wondered what it tasted like. But if you've never somehow played this game before, it should be obvious at face value. This is a kart racing game a la Mario Kart, a la Diddy Kong Racing. Pretty much every single game had the same formula, but what they did with that formula in the universe that it inhabited was always different. Some franchises did the transition to this type of genre much more successfully than others, and I would say Crash Team Racing, at least in my opinion, is every bit as good as Mario Kart 64 when it comes to driving mechanics, overall fun, and just that sensation of having a good time. Because what these games were, more important than anything else, were fun party games where you could race against your friends and just basically have a blast doing it. And for Crash Team Racing, that 100% succeeds the same way that something like Mario Kart 64 does. And back in the 90s, I loved everything Crash Bandicoot. I had all three of the platform games. I had a PlayStation 1 that I got for Christmas. So when I heard Crash was getting a racing game, you know I was there day one, and I had an absolute blast. There is basically the same type of mechanics you would find in any kart racing game. The boost off the start, drifting around the corners, turbo pads and items, but all of the items have been pivoted over to the Crash Bandicoot universe. They mirror and emulate basically everything that comes out of something like Mario Kart. The bananas being able to go behind you being TNT boxes, that sphere right there almost being like a blue shell, and obviously we have different variants of a turbo. This is a game you've definitely played before. Crash Team Racing isn't doing anything new with the formula of what a kart racing game is going to be, but what I think Naughty Dog did better than other developers of the time, and this might be a contentious claim, I think the course design in Crash Team Racing edges out Mario Kart 64 by maybe like 3 to 5% better. Leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think. I'm definitely not crapping on Mario Kart 64, one of my favorite games of all time to play with friends on that system, but I do like the course design, layout, and overall functionality of Crash Team Racing just a little bit better. Although I will say, in a bad way when I do have to play alone for a capture, the rubber banding in this game is so simplistic that winning pretty much every single race against the CPU is going to be a pretty easy time. And this, like any other game in its genre, is going to come alive so much more if you were playing with friends versus playing against the CPU. But I mean, just take a look at the course. All of these item boxes, the boost pads, it has everything you need in a racing game, and some of the courses are going to be more concrete racing where you're really just drifting around the corners. Other ones have a lot of hazards you need to deal with. But what other game is going to give you a sexy Bandicoot as a reward for winning the race? I really don't know how any developer thought that making a Bandicoot become a quasi-woman and giving her that attractiveness was a good idea back in the day. Looks nothing like Crash whatsoever, but I guess just what people wanted to have back then. But of course we have the polar bear that you can ride in one of the Crash Bandicoot games, and honestly if you give me the option as racing as a polar bear, I'm going to take it 10 out of 10 times, and I figured I would start the video with Crash, the person that everybody knows. And as you see as we get into this next course, the obstacles are going to get much more intense, and I really like the mix of courses in this game. For every pure racing course where drifting in your race line really makes a difference between winning or losing, you're going to get a course that's got a ton of obstacles like these little bouncy pads here. As we come into this temple, you're going to see not only graphically is it absolutely spectacular and really sells the universe of Crash Bandicoot, but we get these boost jumps with these fireballs bursting from the lava that we need to time up and basically miss. I feel like Mario Kart 64 did this as well, but I feel like later Mario Kart entries really amped up the obstacles more than we saw on 64, where Crash Team Racing really sells those obstacles right out of the gate. But I will say, as a franchise is concerned, Mario Kart definitely has the more consistent entries. But Crash Team Racing has a fire soundtrack. Go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back. It's just that classic Crash Bandicoot music that you either love or hate. I always love the tropical sort of vibes of the original Crash Bandicoot games, and we get all of that plus more in Crash Team Racing. But I'm going to take you around that entire hot lap right now of this castle area, and I will say, at least tonally and inspirationally, you can definitely tell that the developers and artists had some theming going on from Mario Kart. If this isn't Bowser's Castle, I don't know what it is. It definitely has all of those Bowser Mario Kingdom vibes going on. But you'll see here as I drift around in later levels, drifting is the name of the game. I clip the wall there on my drift and I've lost position against the person in front of me. If you drift just right, you're going to have a good time, and if you drift and hit the wall, you're going to scrub so much speed. And you will see there that I hit a mystery box that ended up just exploding me completely. But that's the great part about this game. The drifting mechanic, the racing line, you live or die by how well you perform. If you drift around the corner just right, you're going to pick up a speed boost and you're going to have a better, tighter racing line that's going to allow you to pass your opponents. If you drift too wide or don't drift whatsoever, trying to get a first place finish is going to be extremely difficult. But you'll see here my drifts have been good. I knock my opponent into that spider there with my racing line, and I'm able to go from third place to first place that quickly and eke out a victory right at the final seconds. And nothing feels better than being at third place in the final turn or second to last turn and being able to get that first place finish at the last possible moment. And I even love the results screen here, giving you this camera angle that would be impossible to race from, but it's a ton of fun to see your racing line after the race. But this game does have some deep mechanics, some that I haven't shown yet because the course hasn't really involved it. But you will see here as we get into this basically like motocross track, there's going to be a lot of different jumps and turns and dips that we need to deal with. You'll see at the beginning I'm intentionally not going to use the jump mechanic because when you go into a drift, your cart does hop ever so slightly. So watch my racing line as I go over these little berms here through the mud, and you're going to see that there's some item boxes that I could have gotten, but I was just too low to actually get them. This is something that the game doesn't 100% explain to you. You get to learn it on your own, but I actually like that sensation of learning a game by experience, not being given a tutorial. I was too small to get that box, but if I go back into another lap and I hit the drift button when I'm going over these little jumps, I can jump into the air, get the item boxes, and also launch myself off the jump, giving myself a faster racing line when I land on the downhill. But this track might be one of my favorites in the game. Go ahead and listen for 30 seconds, and I'll be right back. I just really like the intensity of the soundtrack. It gets you vibing with the race, and it really makes you want to race even that much better. And that's the great thing about Crash Team Racing. This game becomes addictive. You might sit down for a 10 to 15 minute session and walk away, or you might get totally engrossed and end up playing for 3-4 hours and just having an absolute blast. And I'm just showing you the arcade mode, the mode that I love going into. This game has different modes and features that you can definitely discover if you've never played it before. And if you haven't noticed already, no, this is not how good an original PlayStation 1 looked. This is running on Duckstation, so I can show you the most modern version of a game like this. And again, we have another sexy Bandicoot. Still weirds me out, but if it does it for you, totally your vibe. But you'll see Polar Bear there has won the race, and he doesn't seem to care whatsoever. It's like he's racing around and he doesn't even know what's happening. He's just doing his thing and happened to stumble into a kart racing series. But Crash Team Racing is one of those special games. Everyone remembers Crash Bandicoot from the PlayStation 1. He was synonymous with the hardware, so it's not at all surprising that a game like this got a kart racing game. As I said earlier in the video, this is one of the biggest genres in the 90s, and if you had a successful platformer, you were going to get a racing game along with it. Mario got Mario Kart 64, Donkey Kong Country got Diddy Kong Racing, and Crash Bandicoot got Crash Team Racing. And the best part is, as long as you play some of these games that I'm mentioning, you're going to have a fun time no matter what game you play. The 90s were just a great time for this genre, and Crash Team Racing 100% killed it with everything it did. It's a fun single player experience, but it gets so much better when you bring friends, which is basically how all of life works. The more the merrier, but if you'd never played this game before, try it out. because I think it holds up incredibly well. Of course, it's not going to go toe-to-toe with something like Mario Kart 8, but if you upscale it, if you make it look prettier, if you play it this way, it's going to feel like it gets 90% of the way there. And of course, the series does not end with this game, but we're doing a little look at the PlayStation 1, so of course this is the game I need to talk about. Because we just run 3 laps around one course, and this is just the type of game I love and remember from the PlayStation 1. You could instantly pick it up and play it and enjoy it. It was simple to learn, but there was so much depth and complexity, and of course this was in 3D when just a generation before, everything was completely in 2D. This was just an awesome cap to the Crash Bandicoot franchise on the PlayStation 1, and it would basically be a little bit grim for Crash after this. But short of that, that's the video. 10 out of 10 game. I love it. I'll be back next week with more PlayStation 1. Bye-bye.